Thanks very much, Ciarán. Minister, just before I start, I was trying to think over my head that term we know, the patience of Job. And I always wondered, and I said, well, what does that even mean? I didn't know what Job even was. I knew it was a biblical reference, but I had to Google it there. And it says, Job is presented as a good and a prosperous family man who is beset by Satan with God's permission, with horrendous disasters that take away all he holds dear. And I can't help but think that there has to be some sort of an analysis there with the patience that you have shown with dealing with Brexiteers, dealing with the British government, who seem to have a different plan every week, or no plan at all. And I think that is a fair analysis, or analogy to even draw. The point that I want to make is something that I refrain to a lot, which is what I would call the social fabric of the border area. And I only live two miles from it, as you know. And what I mean by that is about how our communities are so intertwined across the Northern Irish border, and have been able to become even more intertwined and even more prosperous as a result of the Good Friday Agreement over the last 20 years. And that is a point that I think is consistently lost upon the British government, upon British media, and people in the United Kingdom in general. Little or no conception of what the social aspect of the border is, and the social fabric that exists from Omeath in County Louth all the way up to Donegal and right along and in between it. And what I mean by that is, it can be anything, whether it's, you're married to someone from across the border, your kids go to school in North Louth but they play football in South Armagh, you live in South Armagh but you work in Dundalk. It's that type of social fabric that I'm really talking to, and I think that has been really lost in a lot of the debate as well at times. I want to also make reference to how reassuring it is that we see President-elect Joe Biden's views on Northern Ireland, that he has had such a long and consistent view on this, and it makes a breath of fresh air from what we've really experienced beforehand. And I think that really has to make Number 10 and Downing Street think twice about the approach that they've had towards Ireland, alongside with the help of Donald Trump over the last couple of years. So that is really, really reassuring. As well. What I want to really focus on the rest of my remarks now is what I think is irrespective of whether we get a deal or not, that these three issues are still going to be issues in the Brexit debate. The first one is the customs, and that's going to be the east and west way we're going to have to look at. The second issue is standards, regulations and licences. And the third thing then is actually logistics and transport. Whether we get a deal or not, they are still going to be issues that we're going to have to be really looking at. And there's going to be indirect impacts under all three of those headings that a lot of businesses in border communities really aren't going to fully understand or fully get the effect of until Q1 of next year. And that could be anything with customs issues, it could be anything with licensing issues or the standard of a product. In terms of logistics and transports, it could be anything if you had perishable goods and logistics taking an extra day or two and you're losing a shelf life, it's shortening your earning capacity as a result. So there are three major points I want to just put on the record that I think would be important to try and look at. Whether we get a deal or not, there are still going to be serious issues we're going to have to countenance and come up with something for. The withdrawal agreement itself and the Northern Ireland Protocol really puts border counties like mine in a much stronger position and a much more comfortable position than they were 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago before they were put into place. And I think at every turn we, as you have already been doing, Minister, and as we see the European Union doing, is standing up against the British government to say that they've entered into a withdrawal agreement in good faith and that there is no renegotiation whatsoever. Bottom line, I think that is really important to do, and that we maintain that stance, which I know we will be doing. I also want to make reference, actually, on a more local level, to what I would call the work of local enterprise offices, LEO offices, in making sure that businesses along border areas are really prepared to be Brexit ready. And in terms of businesses, and we've seen them, and I've seen them in my own area, the amount of workshops, the amount of seminars, everything that they've been doing. And if you're a business in a border community, you really need to be asking yourself, if you haven't already done it, is firstly look at the extent that their business is exposed to Brexit and what is going to be the scale of it. So for some businesses, it's going to totally turn it upside down. For other businesses, they're going to be marginally impacted or not too badly impacted. And it's up to business now to see what scale of that it's going to be. And I had a wonderful conversation with Tom McAvoy, who is in charge of the LEO office in Dundalk. And he said something to me earlier, and I don't mean to be parochial about it, but I want to speak to what I have knowledge of, and that's my own area. He said it to me that if you look at businesses in border regions, but particularly the Dundalk area, over the last 40 years, and we've been on the frontier for 40 years, whether that was the frontier of the Troubles or whether that's the frontier of Brexit now, that at every stage, the type of resilient business people that are there is incredible. That they had to deal with the Troubles, that they had to deal with when sterling was cheaper, people going to shop north. They've had to deal with economic recessions, and now they're having to deal with Brexit. But at every stage, there is a huge resilience within Irish people and within our business community, that I am very confident that no matter what comes along with Brexit again next year, that they will be able to do their very best in overcoming it. They will use the same level of ingenuity that they've always had to use. But a lot of it is down to the supports, Minister, that we have been putting in here as a government. Huge financial support to get businesses Brexit ready, huge levels of information that we're getting out there. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope this, and actually what I wanted to say about that when I talk about a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'll wrap up with this. I remember reading a wonderful article by the late A.A. Gill in the Sunday Times about a week after Brexit. And what he said was that he felt so sorry for the younger generations in Britain who had such a bright future ahead of them as members of the European Union, and that their future was taken away from them by their parents' generation, who had a honeycombed version of what Britain was like in the 1940s and the 1950s that isn't relevant today. And I would really hope that at some stage, a new generation of British people will be able to vote to rejoin the European Union, and that the United Kingdom will be able to come back and be at the heart of Europe, the heart of the European Union, where it should be. It may be 2 decades away, it may be 3 decades away, but I, for one, would be really looking forward to being able to welcome them back at some stage in the near future.